Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 90. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who's liked, shared, commented. Please consider giving us a 5-star rating or review, suggesting anybody you guys have for potential guests for the future. That support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. I also want to thank our sponsors. Family owned and operated since 1976, Samson Equipment has been specializing in full turnkey weight room buildouts from planning to installation. Based in La Cruz, New Mexico, Samson provides professional weight room solutions for those looking to lead the way in advancing our strength and conditioning profession. Coaches have relied on Samson as their top resource for all their weight room renovations because they provide the finest materials and design, product customization, and the most reputable customer service in the business. If you're in the market for elite level strength equipment, weight room renovations, or upgrades, be sure to check out samsonequipment.com to see how Samson has been delivering clients a long-lasting yet affordable product for over 4 decades. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code STRENGTH_game to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Jon Heck. Jon is a strength conditioning coach for the Houston Texans. First arriving with the Texans in 2023, he spent the previous 5 years at his alma mater, the University of North Carolina, as an assistant football strength and conditioning coach. Concurrent to his work on the Tar Heel strength staff, he served as a strength conditioning coach and nutritionist at D1 Sports Training in Raleigh, North Carolina since 2018. Heck got his start in the coaching profession interning under Joe Kenn and his staff at the Carolina Panthers for the offseason and 2017 football season. Heck is a former 4-year starter and 2-time All-ACC selection at right tackle for the University of North Carolina football team. Following his collegiate career, he shifted into training to the platform and has been competing competitively at both Strongman and Powerlifting. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Jon Heck. What's going on, everybody? Today I'm excited. We've got Coach Jon Heck on the show. How's it going today, Coach?
Going great, man. Happy to be on here.
Hey, I'm happy to have you on. We got to catch you in a little bit of a dead period time, a little slower over with your new gig with the Houston Texans. So we're going to touch on a few things from now your new transition, like fully out of college for the time being, working in the NFL again. But really kind of want to start at where it all began for you. Like what got you involved in the strength game, lifting, competing in strongman and powerlifting. Obviously, like you've talked about it a lot before, but how did it really initially started and what's it looking like nowadays, coming off that injury and everything as well?
Yeah, man, for sure. So I kind of fell in love with the weight room at an early age. My dad played in the NFL. So anytime I would tag along with him to the facility, wherever he was at, I always kind of gravitated towards the weight room, towards the strength and conditioning staff. And I don't know why. There was just something about it that kind of drew me in. I was interested in it. I loved watching it. And I couldn't wait until I got to lift weights like those guys. So when I started really lifting weights, I was in 7th grade. And, as soon as I started, I was hooked on it. 7th grade was the same year that I started playing tackle football. That was the year I started lifting weights. And, from there, football was always kind of felt like my off season and the summer training, the conditioning, that for me, like that was my in season. I loved it. I loved competing in the weight room, competing and conditioning with my teammates, and it was an area that I excelled, and just had an interest in. So from an early age, I knew I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. And the more I studied training and fell in love with it, I really became a fan of powerlifting, a fan of competitive strongman and bodybuilding. So I knew when I got done playing, I wanted to be a strength coach, and that I also wanted to compete in powerlifting and/or strongman. I made the decision going into my senior year playing at UNC that I wasn't going to pursue playing football anymore beyond that. I would have had the opportunity. I was a four-year starter at UNC. Coming out senior year, I was projected fifth, sixth, seventh rounder. But like I said, going into that year, I knew that I was kind of burnt out on playing. That really wasn't where my passion was. My passion was on the training side, the strength and conditioning. So I think coming from a football family, the son of an offensive lineman, offensive line coach, my younger brother, he's in the NFL, plays offensive line. I think I kind of just wanted to carve my own path. I think that played a little bit of a role in wanting to getting a little bit burnt out on it, just always being in it since I was a kid, and just really wanted to do my own thing and pursue what I was really passionate about. So once I got done playing my senior year at Carolina, I didn't do senior day. I didn't I didn't do pro day, senior bowl, combine, any of that. I went right into strength and conditioning and started working at a facility called D1 Sports Training, and I started competing in powerlifting. I really, even though I was burnt out on playing football, I wanted to do something to keep kind of the competitive fire going, because competition was still a big part of who I was. So immediately started training for powerlifting, got hooked on it, spent a couple years doing that. And then when I ended up down the road taking a job at UNC, back in my alma mater, there was an awesome strongman gym in Raleigh called Spider Strength. It's owned by a pro strongman, former America's Strongest Man, and the biggest roadblock with getting into strongman tends to be lack of equipment access, and then lack of someone to teach you how to do it. So when I finally found Spider Strength, when I moved back to the Triangle area, I immediately went over there and connected with those guys and started training with them. And then that's when I really fell in love with strongman and started competing in that. Spent a few years doing that. And then unfortunately, right about the same time that the pandemic hit and the world went into quarantine, sustained a pretty severe back injury, badly herniated disc, compressed the nerve in my right leg, and I've been kind of dealing with the nerve damage from that for the last 3 years now. So that really derailed competitive strongman for me. I'm still able to train hard and heavy, but unfortunately, things like heavy moving events, yoke, farmer carry, things like that are kind of off the table for me at the moment. My right calf is still essentially useless after that injury. And that's where I kind of am now. Still training hard. Training is still my passion. I've joked with my wife that I'll die under a barbell, most likely. So whether I'm competing or not, it's always going to be a big part of my life. And I think it's something that plays a vital role with me, as far as my passion for being a strength coach as well.
No, that's awesome. It's unfortunate to hear like that. I mean, the road to recovery is taking this long, but I mean, if you have the ambition to be a pro strongman and earn your pro card, like you can't escape those heavy carrying events and the axial load that comes with them. And I've heard you talk about like obviously like using like Stuart McGill's like big three and like following Brandon Lilly and all his like road to rehab and everything. Like those are still things that like I've employed having back injuries from like strongman as well. And obviously I'm not carrying 1,000 pounds on my back. I get to use the smaller toys in my weight class. But the amount of toll that takes on you, especially when you throw in the amount you're on your feet and you're coaching, like the expectations and responsibilities of being a college or a professional like strength coach. Those are things you can't take out of your schedule because that's where like your money comes from. Like now going through some of your recovery, have you found better ways to kind of accommodate or like factor in that, hey, I'm going to have to be on my feet for 6 hours. So maybe I can't do this on this day, or you change your schedule a little bit up so that you can still get the full benefit out of your training.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, training first thing in the morning at this point has been crucial. After a long day of coaching, there's pretty much no chance I'm getting under a squat bar or, doing any kind of hard training, especially when we're out coaching in the heat. So with that said, I'll sooner train at 5:30 in the morning than I will train at 4:30 in the afternoon, for that reason. So those morning sessions, they take some getting used to. I have to get up early enough to get a full meal in and digest that meal before I actually get into the weight room. So I mean, sometimes I'm waking up in the early 4 o'clock hour, but again, I'll take training first thing in the morning before I'm out in the heat, before I'm coaching all day, moving equipment and all that, before I'll try to do that afterwards. So those morning sessions have been helpful. Um, I'm a grandpa. I've got an early bedtime. Wife and I are usually in bed at 8:30, 9 p.m. these days. So I'm able to get a full night's sleep, have those early sessions, get my meals in, and then I'm able to coach all day from there and not have to worry about doing it afterwards.
Yeah, I found that kind of works well, especially like I know you know this area down in Jacksonville. So if you plan on training in the afternoon, you can plan on going through 20 towels and being humid the entire time you're trying to train.
Yep.
It's rough. No, so with that stuff, have you kind of noticed obviously like getting burned out a little bit from football, but still finding that love for the weight room? I've talked to a lot of guys that were kind of the same way, maybe getting involved, especially if you're in a contact sport, football, lacrosse, hockey, a lot of times you find the weight room a lot sooner than other typical sport athletes, like team sport athletes. Was the individual side like of like competition for like powerlifting and strongman, was that another thing that was kind of enticing to you, or was it really just like the sport of football in general, like after such a elongated amount of time?
Yeah, I really like the individual component of powerlifting, of strongman, because I get to be in control of everything. I get to write my program. I get to design my training, and it's all on me. It's on me to get my meals in and you know be dialed in on my recovery. So I like being able to put together every component of my plan for myself, be accountable for it myself. And, I don't have, I'm not at the mercy of outside influence or coaches to do that for me. So, kind of like being your own boss, being your own coach in that sense. And then doing my own programming, it continues to always drive my curiosity and, uh, to my coaching. I've learned so much training myself and programming for myself that I've carried over to what I bring to the athletes. Be having skin in the game and continuing to push my body hard and training hard myself and continuing to find better ways to train myself. And I get to actually feel what works, what doesn't work, get to go through the sessions and all the different exercises and movements. And getting to do that all myself and pushing myself hard and getting a better sense of what these guys are going through. I feel like it kind of keeps me in tune with the athletes and the program that we're writing for these guys. And I'm continuing to have to find better ways to recover and work on my mobility and everything that goes into your development. I'm still kind of staying dialed in on that myself, and that's been it's been a big part of my coaching.
Yeah,
being able to
definitely.
take everything. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's a great way to do it. I think that's a big proponent why I think all coaches should continue to train, even if it's not at the same level that you were doing before, or it's not the same manner that you were doing, like still finding ways to kind of push the envelope, stay involved, be relatable to your athletes and understand what they're going through. That's huge. I know, like, I don't want to harp on like the injury and everything like a lot because obviously like that's still something that you're dealing with, but have you realized or have you found anything from that, like the how mentally like that affected you, like not being like the strong guy, or kind of being the one that was quote like on the sideline? Have you been able to kind of use that like to work with some of the guys maybe that are going through rehab or going through tough times, or kind of feeling that same sort of burnout that you were feeling before, and relate to them a little bit different now that your training's kind of shifted from what you were doing before?
Yeah, and
When I got hurt, that was a tough one for me. It felt kind of like kind of like I lost a little bit of my identity when I was kind of at uh, the peak of my competitive strongman. I was kind of just hitting stride and right on the edge of getting a pro card, and then that injury happened, and it kind of felt like I lost a little bit of myself, and it was almost at times it was almost like embarrassing being in front of the athletes, being smaller, weaker, kind of dragging around a bum leg there for a while. Um, I like being in that weight room, you know, walking the talk and being able to anything that I'm going to ask these guys to do, I can do it. And I'm continuing to do it myself and push myself and be a walking example. So when that was taken away from me, I felt like I'd lost some of my edge. And but to your point, that really forced me to be in a situation where it's like, all right, I can basically just quit and just be a weekend warrior and while I coach, or I can just kind of go all in on what I can do. So I really went all in um, on mobility work, all in on a lot of my low back rehab, all in on um, just anything that I could do. I really couldn't do anything axial loaded. Lower body training was very limited. But after a few years of strongman, I'd gotten big. I'd gotten kind of stiff. I had a number of it. I had knee issues. I had shoulder issues. I had so much going on that I was like, all right, while I'm in this period where I can't really push it hard in training, I'm going to be the most mobile, healthy, balanced version of myself physically. So it was I went all in on mobility, correctives, prehab, and um, man, body felt amazing. And it wasn't the same high as chasing big lifts, big numbers, but seeing your mobility improve, seeing, feeling yourself not being in pain anymore. Um, that was I like that. And that was something that I kind of gravitated towards. I started to chase that. Um, so that kind of opened my eyes to, I'm not always going to be able to compete at the highest level. I'm not always going to be able to be pursuing, world record numbers in the weight room or whatever. But as long as I'm able to pursue something that I can do, and have something to chase after, even if it's just chasing after, incredible mobility, as long as I have something to chase and dive into and focus on, I can be happy. So spent a year doing all that stuff, and I learned a lot doing it. A lot of stuff that I've really added to my coaching repertoire, in the mobility realm, in the correctives realm, in the prehab, on the PT side. So that injury, it really allowed me to bring another dimension to my coaching toolbox, spending that year kind of having to redirect my focus myself.
No, it's kind of a silver lining definitely to it. It's unfortunate that it has to happen, but sometimes those experiences that you talk to with other coaches that's like the catalyst that really drives their coaching even more, and it gives them more of a niche, and it propels them to kind of dig even deeper into different subject matter that maybe you didn't want to pursue before because you were already really good at something. Like you already had the experience as an O lineman, like you knew what those guys were going through, like you dove into nutrition and all the other stuff. But now this kind of added, like you said, like more dimensions, and like it made you more well-rounded as a coach, because it kind of forced you to take a step back and learn about other things that you weren't spending as much time on. And it's cool to see, because now, like, I'm not like super big into football. Like I've worked football at a few colleges, but like I'm not in it like you are, or a lot of coaches that spend their entire time working their way up to the NFL. But to see like offensive linemen like actually start working on mobility more, working on correctives, like not just trying to get as big as possible, get as wide as possible. Like it's pretty interesting to see the athleticism now that's starting to develop with those guys. Like, how do you kind of address it? Because you come from a background of doing that, like obviously focus on your nutrition, focus on mobility and correctives and stuff. Like, are you kind of the go-to guy when it comes to in the box players and be like, hey, this is what you can be, but you have the skills to play at the NFL now?
Yeah, so, I mean, the big man position groups, that's always going to be the group that I'll tend to work with and have a lot of relatability to. Having played offensive line myself and been what those guys have been through, knowing the physical demands of those positions, and just kind of looking the part and kind of having the respect from those guys. I've tended to work with the O line and D line primarily for most of my career. I love working with those guys, and being able to impart a lot of the things I've learned over the years to add a dimension to their game, like I just talked about, the mobility side of things, and strengthening a lot of areas that often get neglected, in training, whether it's adductor strength, for example, anti-rotational core strength, posterior shoulder, things like that. Being able to add some of those components to the training of the big men can go a long way for them and their ability to bend and move on the field, and their durability, their resiliency, which is huge for those guys. So, it's not all about just grown man brute strength on the line of scrimmage. Being able to bend and have durable, resilient joints, that's huge for those guys.
No, it's awesome. Hey, so from your time, obviously, like you worked, like one of your first positions was interning with Joe Kenn, like at the Panthers. Now being back in the NFL after spending 5 years coaching at UNC, what's kind of your bring back to NFL, like first impressions of being on the pro side, without getting into like the details of what you guys are doing with the Texans? Like, what are some of the differences, like from the coaching side, that you're starting to see, maybe with the players that you're working with, like the time constraints, maybe some of the rules and stuff that you have to go through, or expectations, like for anybody that is interested in getting into the coaching side of either college or professional, and they're trying to choose between the two?
Yeah, so I mean, there's pros and cons to all of them. The jobs are different in many ways. They're the same in many ways. As far as some of the differences, you know, at most programs at the college level, the strength and conditioning coach is to some degree kind of an authority figure, whether he's a full-blown disciplinarian for the team. That often depends on the head football coach and what he wants from his strength coach. But in college, there's a degree of being an authority figure, kind of setting the culture, handling discipline, things of that nature, whereas that's not really part of the job in the NFL. In the NFL level, we are much more in service to these athletes. We are trying just to do, anything we can to improve their performance, to improve their durability, their resiliency, keep them healthy throughout the season. That's our role. Whereas in college, there's much more of a component of, hey, we're bringing in young men. It's kind of our job to develop them physically and and mentally and help them grow as men, which was a part of the job at the college level I did like. Um, Obviously in college, you're dealing with 18 to 21-year-old kids. Um, they're younger, but then also it's a small range of ages. Most of those guys are at a fairly similar level of, the mileage that they have on their body and where they're at in their development. Whereas in the NFL level, I mean, you're dealing with 21 to 41-year-old men. There's a huge range of ages, of experience levels. The amount of mileage that's on different guys' bodies. There is a huge range with that. So with working with these guys in the NFL, where at the college level, we were in a little bit more of a developmental role, really able to develop them physically year round. We get to work with them for 4 to 5 years, have them all in our program and kind of slow cook them through the process. Here in the NFL, we've got 16-year vets. Well, we can't train them the same way that we're going to train, a second-year guy or a rookie. So there's a lot more individual care that has to be given to these guys based on, where they're at physically, where they're at in their career, what position they play. And then we have less time with them in the offseason, the NFL. There's voluntary periods of training throughout the winter, throughout the spring, and we will have guys come to that. But once the real off season starts, we just have a couple weeks with them where it's just strength and conditioning with the team. Then after that, then they start working with the football coaches, and then from there, it's kind of a difficult task navigating programming to work around what they're doing on the football field with the coaches, because obviously the field at that point takes precedence over what we're doing with them. So we're having to figure out ways, what's the best stimulus we can give the guys that's going to continue to, drive adaptation and get them to where they need to be physically, but also we can't cross the line of where we're putting them in a bad spot for football. So we're in college, we've got them for 9 weeks in the winter where we can just spend 9 weeks training. And then we get them for 9 weeks in the summer where it's just strength and conditioning. We don't have that in the NFL. So we've really got to maximize the time that we do have.
Yeah, it's crazy how much you think from an outside perspective you would get so much more time with those guys, but they're on contracts where the season's over, they're gone. Like they might not even live in that city when the season comes around. They come back to town and that's about it. Especially like you talked about some of those old vets, if they're in a place for their first contract and they stay there for 10 years, their family might be there the entire time and they just come back and play their games for that season somewhere else. And then you won't see them during those off periods. And you're probably kind of revert back to what you were doing in college, where you get to see a lot of the rookies and a lot of the guys that aren't on that 53-man roster even more so, and they become the developmental guys. And then you're probably just running individual programs for all those different types of experience levels, playing levels, for all the other guys. It's crazy to hear, especially like most people just see the product on the field, but to hear a little bit behind what's going on before Sunday rolls around. Have you kind of also seen this too from college? Because even though like you were at UNC and it's a Power 5, it's a big school with a lot of resources, especially for football, you still wear kind of a lot of hats. Like you're on the recruiting trail, you're working with, like you're talking to guys that are coming in, like you're still giving advice and everything. But like I even looked on like the Texans website, there's 8 people that are associated with like nutrition, like either chefs or wellness, sous chefs, whatever it is. Like I know nutrition's been a big kind of change that you've been working with clients as well on that. So how does it happen? How do you kind of work nutrition with your guys now, having those resources to kind of push them towards, or is that exactly what you do nowadays?
I'm sorry, are you talking about nutrition with our players here in Houston or with clients that I've worked with?
Now like in Houston, like with you with those guys, and then we can kind of transition over to like some of the other clients that you work with personally.
Yeah, so I have no role with nutrition here on the team. We've got a full staff of dietitians. We've got three RDs on our team, which I mean we're spoiled rotten with the resources we have on the nutrition side, the food that we provide these guys, and that we as coaches get to benefit from ourselves is incredible. Our director of nutrition, Lad Harris, he does an amazing job. And then he's got two other RDs on his staff. He's got a couple fantastic chefs in there. We've got all the resources in the world from a supplement standpoint, from the electrolyte drinks, all the different bottled fluids we're able to give these guys, all the snacks, and then the food itself. So it's a great situation over here nutritionally, and those guys do a great job with that. Um, just speaking in general terms, having worked with athletes over the years and at times played a role in the nutrition side, I think that is the component of physical development that guys tend to struggle with the most and tend to do the worst job on as athletes. For some reason, guys in football especially have no issue embracing the discomfort of waking up early, of pushing themselves hard in training, running until they puke, working out, doing football practice out in the blazing heat. Guys are willing to do that. They do it on a daily basis. But when it comes to the discomfort of having to eat when you're not hungry, if you're a guy that has to gain weight, or uh, not eating when you are hungry, if you're a guy that has to lose weight, guys tend to not be able to embrace it quite the same way. And obviously a training session or a football practice lasts an hour or 2 hours, but the nutrition side of things, that's all day, every day. There's nothing fun or sexy about it. That is just it's a lifestyle that you've got to live, and tends to be a hard one for guys to really embrace that. Food is so tied into culture and social life and emotion. Um, but when an athlete can really get their nutrition dialed in, man, I think that goes just as far, if not further, than training does. I think, like for me personally, when I really got my nutrition dialed in, and I had been training hard for years, I'd been, um, you know, training under good programs for years, but it wasn't until that I went all in on nutrition that things really took off for me physically. But when you're able to really get your body composition in a great place, your ability to add lean mass, your ability to recover, your ability to get in shape is going to be so much better when you're eating on a consistent routine. Um, eating quality foods, your digestion is going to be in so much of a better place. When your digestion's in a good place, your appetite's in a good place. When those things are in line, you're probably going to keep your blood sugar in a better place. And you know, having a leaner body composition, especially as big guys, this is something that I believe in for offensive and defensive linemen, putting a priority on improving your body composition, especially in the off season. That goes a um, long way in their ability to recover, a long way in their ability to bend and rid their body of inflammation and maintain their energy throughout a practice, throughout training sessions, and put on lean mass. It's easier to put on muscle when you're leaner. Um, I think that's huge for those guys. So the guys that are able to go all in with nutrition, those tend to be guys that have a lot of success. But like I said, that tends to be the hardest for guys to do.
Have you working with some of the clients, have you noticed any trends that are maybe different from like some strongman clients or powerlifting or football, like between those sport like athletes when it comes to nutrition? Or is it really just individual, like kind of client based?
Yeah, so ever since joined the staff here in Houston, I've kind of been on a little bit of a hiatus as far as working with clients, just getting settled with a new job, learning a new system, all that. I kind of put that on pause, but for a while there, I was working with a lot of clients, particularly with nutrition, strongman competitors, powerlifters, bodybuilders, general population folks. Um, you know, a lot of the same things that I just described with football players, it's the same way with all of them. With that said, when you're talking about someone who reaches out to a coach wanting to hire them on for their nutrition services, you're already talking about someone who's, willing to make a commitment, someone who's looking to make a change nutritionally. So a lot of those people, they come in with a good mindset, and I tell them up front, hey, this is going to be hard. This isn't going to be easy. This is going to take, some getting used to. It's going to take some sacrifice and discomfort on your end, just the same way that, you know, wanting to get bigger, stronger, faster is going to require some sacrifice and discomfort. Um, I think general population folks that they tend to struggle with it just like anyone else. I mean, most people don't eat on any sort of a routine. It's just kind of you eat when you're hungry. You might just eat two meals during the day throughout the week, then you binge on the weekends. When people really look at what they eat day to day, it tends to be all over the place. So getting someone just on a consistent set routine where they're having to plan it out and kind of go through that routine every day, that's hard for people. Those who are able to do it, the results come fast, your body changes fast, you will feel so much better physically and mentally. But man, people have a hard time with it. And then especially for my strongman competitors, I mean, eating's the job. If you're an open class strongman competitor, to me, the eating part is a bigger job than the training is. I mean, the amount of food that you have to put down day in and day out to fuel that kind of mass, to fuel that kind of training. That was kind of that was something that was becoming difficult with myself when I was competing. And the timing of my injury was, looking back now, it was good timing because I was kind of reaching a crossroads where I was getting to a level in strongman where I think to continue to progress up through the international level, it would have taken something away from my coaching. Just the amount of time you've got to dedicate to those training sessions for that kind of level of strongman, and but more importantly, the eating. I mean, that just becomes your life at that point. Like for a guy in my height, I mean, I would have had to be damn near 400 pounds to be competitive on the international scale. And I mean, the amount of food that I'd have to be putting down daily, that is hard work. I mean, the training is easy. It is eating 6 meals a day, and every one of those meals is 1,000+ calories. And you're doing that not just one day or one week or a month, but you're doing that every day, every week, every month for years. That is hard. But to me, that's what separates the great bodybuilders, strongman competitors, power lifters. That separates the great ones, is the ones who can go into robot mode and make eating a job.
Yeah, I mean, that the guys that do that, a testament to them, like the consistency and the dedication it takes to do that. Like it becomes a job. But the hard part is too, if you're trying to make your way in the profession and you have to support yourself with another job, like you're doing essentially one unpaid job to like facilitate at the moment a hobby you want to turn into a professional life, and then still have to work hours. And when it, like it said, when it comes to coaching, you're on your feet, and sometimes you're just so tired that you don't want to eat 1,000 calories right after you did a session. And then you got to go out in the heat again and run conditioning with a football team. You got to come back in. It becomes difficult. I've talked to other coaches that are doing the same thing, and like like at your height, weight, like in the professional class. And it's a full-time job. You're trying to run two full-time jobs. So it seems like it's always going to come to a crossroads where it becomes, which one do you pursue? Like, and unfortunately, like that kind of happened to you at one point in time, where with the injuries, like who knows what would have happened after it. But I always ask that to people that are trying to pursue it at a high level, is like, you can't balance it. So how do you juggle it? And like you talked about, since the injury, it's been training in the mornings. It's been finding the time to like get the work done before you're wiped out, like from coaching. Like, do you have any other advice for anybody that's trying to do both things and like find a way to balance it, whether it be like relationships, it'd be like another business on the side, things like that? Like, how do you stay involved in coaching and still take care of yourself at the same time?
Yeah, man, it's tough. There's not one perfect formula to it, and especially like you said, when you've got a family, that really adds a dimension to things. I mean, the one good thing about being a strength coach is you work in a weight room. So that tends to make things a little bit more convenient and accessible in terms of being able to find a time during the day to be able to train. Um, if you've got a home gym, that's a great way to do things, especially if you've got, a kid at home. It's a lot easier to wake up, go out and get a lift in the garage than it is to have to, drive out to a gym, drive back, all that. Um, you've got to have a plan. You've got to plan out your week. You've got to have a set plan for, okay, these are the days where I know I've got a window to train. This is when I have to do it. Here's what time I have to wake up to make that happen. Here's what meals I need to prep to stay on schedule with all that. If you're trying to fly by the seat of your pants with this stuff, it's never going to work out. So my biggest advice would be plan out your week ahead of time, plan out the training session, plan out the time, plan out the logistics of it, plan out when you're going to be able to get meals in. Um, for someone like me who's trying to maintain a big body weight as much as I have to eat, uh, meal prepping is huge for me. That's a harder thing for me than the finding time to train is finding times to eat. So I mean, I've used strategies before, like going to liquid meals where I'll drink chicken shakes. If I'm coaching back to back lift groups, I've got 6 minutes in between groups, obviously not enough time to sit down and eat a whole meal. So what I started doing was I'd blend up chicken and water. I'd have that as a shake, and then I'd have another shake that had my carbs in it. So it'd be, fruit, honey, things like that. And just get off the floor, run into my office, pound both, done in 2 minutes, back out to the floor. Um, and I mean, it sounds crazy, but I mean, if you're serious about this stuff, finding little strategies like that. Okay, I've got 5 minutes to try to squeeze a meal in. Well, here's what I can do to accommodate that. So I think just having a plan and being prepared up front, that's the best way to go about doing this stuff. So you can maximize every bit of time that you have, and you can make small windows of time work for what you need to.
No, that's great advice. I mean, if it means that much to you, you're going to make it a priority. And if it's chicken shakes on the floor, like between sessions, that's what it's got to be. So, no, that's awesome. Hey, so like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and overtime. So you can go as quick as you want with all of them, or you could take your time and expand on any. But you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession and biggest influence in strength sports.
Okay.
Two biggest influences in strength and conditioning, I will say Joe Kenn and Brian Hess. Two men that had the honor to work for. Joe Kenn, I worked for him with the Carolina Panthers. That was my first true football strength and conditioning job. And man, I learned so much from him just about what it means to be a strength coach and the expectations that come with it, and just his ability to command a room and, you know, relate to all the guys, whether they, doesn't matter what demographic they were. He was able to relate to everyone. He was able to get the most out of everyone. He was an incredible programmer. So I learned so much from House. And then Brian Hess, who I worked for 4 out of my 5 years at Carolina. Man, I just utmost respect for that dude. He just brought a level of energy and passion and selflessness to his coaching that I've never seen before, ever. His ability to make guys love training and get the most out of guys, and the organization and planning and meticulous programming that he brought to our program. I learned so much from him, but I think most of all, that infectious, passionate energy that he brought day in and day out is unmatched, and that's something that I try to bring to my coaching game. As far as an influence in strength sports,
or favorite like strength athlete, like strongman or powerlifter you've always like looked up to.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to give a shout. This won't be a lifter that people have heard of. I'm going to give a shout out to one of my closest friends from back home. His name's Joey Carzoli. He's a PhD now. He was the one who kind of got me into powerlifting. He was a competitive powerlifter himself. I've got to give him credit. Joey, if you're listening, man, you were the one who kind of really got me into programming in the first place, and kind of got me into powerlifting. And that was kind of one of the first dominoes that tipped to get all this started for me. As far as favorite strength athletes, man, in the strongman world, Pujanowski is always going to be a favorite. Bill Kazmaier, Eddie Hall. I'm always going to be an Eddie Hall fan. Brian Shaw. One guy that to me is the strongest man who's ever lived, and I'll get in a debate with anyone about that, is Lasha Talahadze, the Georgian weightlifter. He's still an active Olympic lifter. To me, that might be the most impressive strength athlete I've ever seen in the world.
Yeah, that's a strong list right there for everybody, coaches and all those athletes. That's awesome. Hey, so when you're not coaching, you're not training, you're outside the weight room walls, what are some of your hobbies that you go to?
Fishing has always been a big part of my life, especially growing up in Florida. Fishing, that's been, my biggest hobby. And then one totally random little thing that my wife and I are huge on are doing escape rooms. Have you ever done an escape room? I don't know why, we're always gravitated towards, riddles, puzzles, that sort of thing. So we did just about every escape room in North Carolina. It feels like we've already done a few here in Texas.
Nice. And so if you weren't coaching, what do you think you would be doing as a profession?
I'd be somewhere in the fitness space, most likely. I'd probably in the private side, even if it wasn't coaching. Whether it was selling diets and programs on through social media, running a YouTube channel, having a podcast, kind of getting in on that side of the fitness space. I think that's what I would be doing. Public speaking is one of my strong suits, so possibly something involving public speaking.
Okay. Hey, so if you're setting up an ideal training day in the morning, it's 5:30, you got your meal in, what is playing on the speakers? And if you got the freedom after that training session and no time commitment, what's the best post-training meal look like?
Okay. As far as what I listen to in training, I've actually made over the last few years like a concerted effort to kind of train in a calm state. And I've definitely noticed when I'm training heavy that keeping things a little more zen and low arousal, I recover a lot better. Whereas when I'm getting psyched up, cranking up the music, ripping the nose torque, I'm just wired for the rest of the day. I don't sleep. I feel drained the next day. So I've really kind of tried to stay zen in training. So I'll sometimes listen to quieter music, like even country music at times. But man, when it's time to go to a different place and lift something really heavy, I'm going I'm going Rob Zombie, maybe Kill Switch Engage, Five Finger Death Punch, Pantera. I'm probably going more into that realm. But on a typical training day, it's going to be more rap, hip hop, and like I said, maybe even country if I'm trying to stay real calm.
Save
And
it
then
for when you need it.
as far as the post workout meal, um, I like to go to a breakfast or a brunch spot and crush some steak, eggs, and pancakes.
All right, all right. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. What does training and competing mean to you? So like whether it be football or kind of more of your love like barbell sports, like what does that really like come down, like boil down to you at the end of the day?
To me, it's who I am. Like that is my identity. That is my passion. That was my first love, and it to this day it still is. I think it's what a big part of what drives me. Like obviously, coaching at this point is I don't compete in strength sports anymore, so my coaching career and my wife and having a family, those are my two biggest priorities. But training is what I still have like for myself, and that is my thing, and it is something that just it makes me excited to go to bed at night, wake up in the morning, and it drives a curiosity and a passion for my coaching. I feel like I'm at my best individually, when I'm having fun with training. So I'd say it's my identity, it's my passion.
No, that's awesome. That's to be passionate and be dedicated about something and have kind of an outlet that you can always revert back to. And it's kind of like your escape room. It's fun, it's exciting, but it's always something you can kind of it's always there if you need it. And it's yours too, especially if you're someone that enjoys kind of strength sports and individual sports. Like there's a community when you go compete and you train with people too. But the majority of the time you're gonna a lot of be training by yourself, especially if you're a coach. So you really have to love it. And if you do, it's gonna drive a lot of what you do, and it's gonna give back to your coach and it's gonna give back to your life in general. So that's awesome to hear. Hey, for anybody who's got questions for you or want to follow up, I know once you get like nutrition stuff back going, hopefully at one point when things calm down and you're situated in Houston, where can people follow along and reach out to you for anything else?
Yeah, you can check me out on Instagram at what underscore the underscore hex 71. That's where people can find me most of the time.
Awesome. Hey, Jon, I really appreciate your time today. Good luck with everything, and hopefully you guys have a great season. Look forward to watching you guys compete this year.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on.
Of course, man.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.